a chance, I feel very lucky to get a pre-screening of the movie Chasing the Present. And so why don't you, just in your own words, tell, you've probably said this a million times, I know you're promoting the movie, it's coming out, but go ahead and do that pitch, and then we can go into some questions.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for the kind intro. Yeah, basically I spent the last 5 years of my life trying to understand anxiety and the other mental health issues that I was having. From the age of like 15 or so, I was suffering from really bad panic attacks, and it was just horrible. At the age of 21, I overdosed on cocaine, and things weren't going in the right direction, that's for sure. So I wanted, then after that I moved to Amsterdam, which is, I guess, not the place to go after you overdose from cocaine. But in general, I don't know why I moved to Amsterdam. I felt like something in the US wasn't right for me. So I moved, and I was there for a few years, and then I moved to Bali. And I've been in Bali, Indonesia, on and off for almost the past 10 years. And after a couple of years of being there, I kind of became successful, in the financial material world. I had some businesses going well, real estate stuff, yoga studios, vegan restaurants, all many different types of businesses. And I was like, wow, okay, like I kind of achieved the stuff that my dad and that everybody told me in my life that I needed to achieve in order to be happy. But I was still waking up in the night with these horrible panic attacks. And, even 3 years ago, I wasn't even able to drive a car on a highway. Like, I would literally drive on the highway, and within 5-10 minutes, I would have a complete anxiety, panic attack, freak out, and need to pull over the car. And I realized, like, okay, and that was during the filmmaking process. Like, this isn't working. What's going on? So I spent that 5 years traveling around the world, going to India and studying yoga, going to Nepal and studying meditation with monks and nuns in the mountains, going to Peru and living in the Amazon jungle for 4 or 5 weeks, doing ayahuasca ceremonies with the Shipibo people, driving across the US, speaking to as many people that inspired me as I possibly could, Iceland, Europe, all over the place, trying to find answers, trying to find a way to end my suffering, other than just taking a pill and kind of numbing myself out, So I came across this guy. Well, actually, our team came across this guy. His name was Gary Weber. This is about 4 years ago or so, 3 or 4 years ago. And he's a nonduality speaker. He's a longtime follower of Ramana Maharishi and Rupert Spira and these guys. And he said something to me that completely changed my life. He told me, I just told him, I'm really sick of suffering. I really would like to end my suffering. And I asked him how he did it. And he said, if you don't have the sufferer, then there's no suffering. And that statement, completely blew my mind. I thought, what do you mean if I don't have the sufferer, there's no suffering? I'm the sufferer. This thing here, this is the thing that's suffering. Of course I'm suffering. How can I get rid of that? What are you telling me to do? And then I started to practice self-inquiry, and I got it. And it was super clear. And I haven't had a panic attack now in almost 3 years. I haven't had anxiety, these things, from time to time. Of course, COVID's happening, businesses are closing. It's a really crazy time. But my relationship with anxiety and the part of myself that's experiencing the anxiety has completely changed. And that's what the documentary is about.
That's a great explanation. And I want to be able to comment on it without giving too much away, because people should see it. I mean, there's some the movie's just really beautiful, and the pacing is great. It's meditative as well as, it just has all these amazing pointers, and your scenes with Gary Weber are incredible. In fact, there's 2 instances where this just, after he says something, this look on your face is like bolt of lightning kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you gave away one of them. But that's how it goes. It's funny because I watched the movie, and then I was thinking, I was taking some notes on things, and one of the thoughts that came to mind was like, wow, I want to say it looked like fun to make because of all the beautiful places you were, but you were looking for answers, and a lot of people seeking are, whether it's and I'd love for you to speak, you just did a little bit, but to be free from suffering, anxiety, because maybe they had some glimpse that there's something more, another speaker that we had earlier, not necessarily seeking, but just got into science and figuring this out because just kind of wanted answers about the physicality of life and, you know, and how that works. Another, well, you spoke with quite a few people, but actually I have a question about Prem Baba. Is it Prem Baba? That's how you say his name?
Yeah.
He's to me anyway, he was kind of one of the stars of the movie. Like everything that guy says it seems like it's gold. One of the things that I want to ask you, because you said, you know, you haven't had a panic attack in some time. You asked one of the folks about what tools they had. Do you have any tools that you've used, or do you realize sort of now that even asking that question wasn't useful, or tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, Prem Baba said in the film that the main two things that have helped him end his suffering were silence and self-investigation. Mm-hmm. And self-investigation is the fundamental point of self-inquiry, you know, which is what Ramana Maharishi teaches. And just that tracing back, you know, the neti approach of tracing back to, you know, I'm not my thoughts. Okay, well, if I'm not my thoughts, what am I? Mm-hmm. And then you start to realize, like, oh, what is this awareness that's here, that's aware of the thoughts? If mm-hmm. I can be aware of my thoughts, then I'm not my thoughts, I'm something else. And how do I learn to connect more and more with that space? So definitely, I still meditate on a regular basis. I still practice self-inquiry. It just feels different. It just comes from a bit of a different space, you know? And, but I do think there's a lot in there. And I can remember the last time that I was on the verge of having a panic attack when something changed and I didn't have the panic attack. And that was, I was driving a car and it was coming up. And for me, anxiety was always very physical. It was something that I felt in my body, like a real feeling. It felt real, you know, really real. Like it would start in my chest, would start to go numb, and my face would start to get tingly, and I would actually get to the point where I couldn't speak, and my heart was going like 1,000,000 miles an hour, and I think I would die. So what would happen is I would feel all of that happening, and like, oh, what's happening? What's going on? Oh my God, am I going to die? And my mind would go, and I would just like connect with my mind and let it take me down this crazy rabbit hole, which would then result in a panic attack and a pure freak out. And the last time I had this, I felt the things that I felt, but the voice came and it just was like that. Oh my God, what's happening? But instead of answering it, instead of participating in the thought, I just watched the thought as it came up and realized that that wasn't me, that wasn't what I am, that it isn't what I am. So I watched it and then it went away. And then one came up again and then it went away. And then I kept driving and the whole sensations in my body, everything just went away. And the next time I got in the car, I drove 8 hours, you know, I drove to Yellowstone, went on a trip to Yellowstone National Park. I was like, okay, I'm going to drive, see what I can do. Then I ended up driving across the country, you know, just to do these things and try to make sure, like, okay, you know, I got this. And I felt anxiety come up also, you know, through these times during COVID. A lot of my businesses are closed down at the moment. You know, I have a lot of business in Bali, Indonesia, and they closed the airport to tourists starting the beginning of March. And the whole economy in Bali depends on tourism. So I felt that come up, like, oh my God, what's happening? What's going on in the world? But instead of participating in that thoughts and getting caught up in what could possibly happen in the future, I just really stay present in that and allow those things to come up, allow that fear to arise, allow that anxiety to come up, and just kind of hold it and sit with it and connect with the true core of what I really am, as opposed to allow my mind to take control and take me over.
Thank you for that. And if you could talk a little bit more about it, because I think that some listening might look at that and say, okay, well, the thoughts, those thoughts are arising. Maybe he's thinking of other, you know, sort of pouring positive onto the negative, so to speak. But that's not what this sounds like. Can you talk a little bit more about that sort of allowing and because obviously well, you said you could feel it in your body, dude. Honestly, when I was watching it happening for you on the film, I could feel it as well. Like there was this compassion for wanting to assist in helping you make it stop. So those patterns have been going for a long time, and it's really cool to hear you tell a story about recognition of this, I guess, of what you would call a trigger moment, and overcome it. But it's not, you know, I didn't get
There's
the
a difference
sense that
between you know, just allowing it to exist and suppressing.
right,
You know,
right.
like if
Yeah,
it comes up for me and I say like, oh, you know, what's happening? I feel these things, and then I tell myself, oh, that's not happening. That doesn't mean anything. Blah blah blah, and I try to push it back in. It's only going to get more strength and come back stronger at some other point in time. So it's just like in a meditation, like, you know, when we're meditating, when a thought comes up, we don't like tell the thought to go away or counter the thought with a positive thought or something like that. A thought is nothing. You know, we don't even, I don't think, no one even knows what a thought really is. It's, you know, it's just a result of all the different patterns and programs and everything that we've been taught in our lives, that this ego thing is there, and it's creating these thoughts, and it's just throwing them out all day long, nonstop, for no apparent reason. And we get confused. You know, we have this misidentification that we are those things, as opposed to the fundamental reality of what we actually are.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm gonna keep asking my questions, but anyone that wants to ask can just click on the Q&A button and ask. You know, I think what's interesting there is, as an entrepreneur, that's a natural happening as well, and creativity comes from there. You have to think, you have to come up with fresh ideas, whether it's an idea for, because you own restaurants and what
restaurants and real estate projects and you know, many different crazy things. Filmmaker.
yeah, exactly. So there's that aspect of it where it's you're like, yeah, the thoughts are happening, you know, coming out of nowhere, but there are moments of creativity that happen as well that play out in this character of James, to that. Is there any sort of difficulty with the crossover?
Like, I mean, sometimes things come up and you get caught, you know, for a second into this thought, into your mind, and you're like, but then you realize, like, whoa, take a breath, have some space from it. That's not what I am, you know, like, it just not, I don't tell myself that, but it just kind of naturally separates, you know. But for sure, times in life, things happen in life. Someone dies, someone passes away, and start to reflect and think and get caught up in thoughts, get caught up in memories of this person and that kind of stuff. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. You know, it just is. And that's okay. The bad part is like, oh my God, I'm having anxiety. I'm about to die. What's going to happen? What happens if I die now? Oh my God. Those are the bad things, you know, that's the problem.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, you talked a little bit about it, but I definitely, it was one of the first notes that I took afterwards is Prem Baba, the cultivation of silence, cultivating silence. It just made perfect sense, you know, what he said. And have you seen that more? Have you seen that more in your being, in your day to day? Has it just come naturally, or you said you still meditate? It's interesting too, because in other cases, in some of these other questions and answers that we're having with folks here, there's like a before and after, you know, in this appearance here, and it's in the movie we get to watch, we get to see it, you know, unfold. But tell me a little bit more about cultivating silence.
Yeah, and cultivating silence doesn't mean just like lock yourself in the closet with the lights off and turn off all the sounds. You know, obviously, you know these things, but a lot of people don't, and that can be important. You know, the less distractions we have on the outside, the easier it is to feel that inner silence. You know, that nothingness. And I think it's a cool, you know, name that you have for your festival, because it's hard for the ego to understand. It doesn't want to accept the fact of that nothingness. You know, but through a cultivation of silence, you know, once you're sitting in meditation for a while and whatnot, and you and the thoughts stop and everything's gone, and you're just there, you know, you're just in the moment and there's nothing there. And I remember one of the first times I experienced that, you know, however many years ago it was, that just pure nothingness my mind came in and even played this little trick, like, fuck, is that all there is? Like, what is this all that's happening? This, like, why am I practicing to achieve nothingness? This doesn't make any sense. You know, even in that point, when you're right there on the cusp, like in the space, enjoying this beautiful empty isness, as you know, as Mooji calls it, which I really like as a definition. But even as you're experiencing that, the mind still wants to come in, you know. But the more you cultivate silence, the more you connect with that space, which you're already connected to, but you know, somehow we feel like we're not, you know. Just as the sun is there, and you know, everybody's heard this, but the clouds come up, but the sun never goes away. You know, it's just sometimes it's hard to see because the clouds are in the way, but they're just clouds. The sun's always there. And that's the thing. So we think, you know, on one end, like we have to get to this space, we have to get somewhere, we have to connect, we have to cultivate silence. And then at a certain point, we realize that that's what we are. Actually, you can't cultivate what you already are. Or you can't connect with something that you're always connected with. You know, it's just what it is. It's just here in this moment, and it pervades everything, and that's what we are on the deepest level of all of it. And you know, and it's sad that myself and everybody, you know, thinks these moments of we're separated from that. You know, the thing that we can't be separated from. So I think. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what cultivating silence has taught me and helped me to realize in my life.
That's great. Thank you. Interestingly enough, so when we were sending out invites for this, we invited Gary Weber. I sent him a note because I'm a fan. And his reply.
I could tell you exactly what he said, I'm sure.
Tell me. Let's see. It was a Ramana Maharshi quote that he.
He drops lots of, because we've asked him to be. I'm surprised he even came to be with us in the film, but he's so deep, like in that space at the moment. He's in silence. He feels like his being, just connecting in that place, is more valuable to the world than him going out and talking and doing that kind of stuff. So it's probably somewhere along that line.
Great call. I'll read it. Yeah, but great call. I put it in there, but it's public speeches, physical activity, and material help are all outweighed by the silence of those absorbed in the self. They accomplish more than others. So, yeah, spending time with him, I'm sure that you got that. I'm going to jump to my next page of questions. Then we have some from the audience. So. All right. So actually, from Ben, hi, what advice can you give us for self-investigation? What self-inquiry did you do? I practice questioning the me and who is having thoughts, as well as being here and now.
I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, that's what I did as well. Just that, you know, when I'm in the meditation, when I'm there, when I'm inquiring, when a thought comes up of, what am I going to do later? It's like, who is that? Who is that one that's wondering what they're going to do later? I mean, the answer to all of that is always the same in essence. You know, it's not like you're going to find a million different little answers for every question that comes up as you inquire. But ultimately what happens is you flip something in your brain, you know, by questioning it over and over and over again. It interferes with these parts of our brain that are connected in the default mode network and all this kind of stuff. And we're able to quiet that down, because eventually we trick our ego, we trick our mind into this and it kind of backfires and doesn't know what to do. And when that happens, you get this quiet, you get this peace. So it's just really inquiring back into, if I'm not my thoughts, then who am I? If I'm not the one who's worried about what's going to go back to, you know, what I'm going to have for dinner later, then who am I? And just, who is that? Who is the one asking? Who is the one listening? Who is the one asking? Who is the one listening? Just going back into it and just tracing it back until you get to that space where there are no questions, where there's nothing. And it's everything at the same time. It was one of my first things too. I was really confused about that when I first started into the non-duality stuff. And I was at a silent retreat actually with Mooji, and he was talking, and I was in that space. I was like, this is everything. I was like, well, wait a second. No, it's nothing, but it's everything and nothing. You know, because
That's why we have the two stages, you know, and interestingly enough, you know, promoting and marketing a conference called Nothing Conference is no easy feat either. People are like, what are you talking about? But
Yeah.
so I have another question from Carla. Thank you so much for this beautiful sharing. I can relate because I've struggled with anxiety most of my life. Not to the extent that you've described, though. Would you say that the difference is that you let the anxiety come up in the body, but it doesn't lead to panic? Or is it that anxiety has stopped completely with the knowing there is no sufferer? That's a good question.
You know, I don't want to jinx it, but I haven't felt that much anxiety. It feels like it has stopped, to be honest. You know, I felt like at the beginning of the pandemic, when all the restaurants were closing and people that were close to me didn't have financial support, and you know, things like this were happening. Of course, it's like, oh man, what am I going to do? But instead of dwelling on it, it's like, okay, it's a natural thing. You know, anxiety is a feeling that's in our body that I think most people experience at some point, and it's there for a reason. But the problem is that it's being triggered now all the time. We're just getting fed with all this news and all this stuff, and now it's getting close to election time, and there's fires, and there's insane racism happening in the US and around the world, and all these things, and it's just getting thrown at us nonstop. It's triggering that fight and flight mechanism in ourselves all the time, where before it was only meant to be there if we were being chased by a lion or whatever. Then we were meant to feel that so that we'll run. But now it's happening every day, hundreds of times a day, and that's not good. And we can be aware that that's happening and that's what's going on, but by not participating in it, we kind of stop it. You know, it's kind of like, I guess a good analogy would be, let's see. Yeah, like if you have a friend, you know, or a guy, you know, if you're a woman and you have this guy and he keeps bothering you, he keeps trying to take you out on a date. I mean, after you tell him like 10 times that you don't want to go, he's eventually going to stop asking you, you know? And if he doesn't, then maybe you should go on the date with him. No, but I mean, in general, you know, if you think of it like that, like if it keeps coming up and I'm not participating in it, I'm not giving it my energy, then it's going to eventually stop. You know, where our attention goes, our energy moves, our energy flows. And if we stop giving attention to that anxiety, I really do feel like it will go away. But it does take practice and it does take time. You know, some of these things have been programmed since the time we were born, from labor issues with our mom, or, you know, things that had happened to us in our childhood, or a lot of unfortunate events that so many of us have experienced have helped seed that into us, you know. And so it takes a while, you know. Something I suffered with for almost 18 years, a couple of years of working on it went away. But I mean, it's not something you just like go to one retreat or you do one round of self-inquiry. I mean, you can get lucky. You can be laying on a park bench and just like, boom, it just disappears. But it takes time. It takes time to get in there and to really understand what's happening.
Yeah. And on that note, it's kind of leading up to my next question. What advice, or what would you say to someone that is suffering from anxiety on a regular basis? What would you tell them to do in terms of, I mean, you went on this beautiful trip and talked to all these folks, but what would you tell just, you know, the average person that just suffers from it? And I think that just another comment is that one of the reasons I think this movie spoke to me personally was that that wasn't regular panic attacks or anxiety, but I would have these moments when everything was going well. And that excuse my language, but it fucks with your mind a little bit, because logically you're like, why is this happening? Everything seems great. And that is your story, success and all these different things. And someone looking at you saying, why, how could you possibly have any stress in your life? You've got all these amazing things. You've reached these levels of success, but what would you tell someone?
I mean, I just did it's on YouTube also. You can Google Ed Sheeran and Hay House, because I just did a summit with Hay House, and I went to interview him in February, and it's a good talk. It's an hour long. And, you know, think of Ed Sheeran, like one of the most famous musicians in history of all time. He sells out Wembley Arena 3 nights in a row. No one's ever done that before, you know? And he told me, like, in that moment when he did that, he realized, like, what's the point of life? what's going on? Getting drunk every day, doing all these things, and just didn't get it. And he's Ed Sheeran, like him, like on that level, not anything close to that, you know. And he was feeling it too. So it's something that it doesn't matter. Your financial, your material success has nothing to do with your internal landscape, so to speak. So I would tell somebody who's suffering with anxiety, you know, it's great to talk about it. I think it's really important to share. You know, in my film, you know, I'm in that moment, I guess I'm 32 or 33 years old, and I tell my dad for the first time in my life that I had anxiety. You know, for 17 years prior to that, he didn't know. I hid it from him. I did lots of drugs, drank, ate handfuls of pills, and everything I could to keep it in, because in my family, it wasn't allowed to be anxious. I wasn't allowed to feel depression. I wasn't allowed to feel anxiety. That's weak. It's a sign of weakness, you know, to my dad. I wasn't allowed to cry. That was only something that girls did, you know? So I had to keep everything in. And by talking about it and opening it up, I was bringing light into that darkness, you know, and by bringing light into that darkness, it starts to dissolve. It starts to go away. And meditation practice, super, super helpful in that. Understanding non-duality to the best of my ability anyway, and listening to great teachers and reading books about this and practicing these things and doing self-inquiry, all those things really, really, really helped. And yeah, and that's what I recommend to everybody. Just talk about it, share, talk about the things that you think in your life might have triggered this anxiety or might have put this anxiety in you, so to speak, and open to it, and realize that that's not what you are. You know, that's the most important thing. Like, I am not this anxiety. This is a feeling that's happening in this skin, in this body. There's some anxiety thing happening in my brain or whatever, but I'm not my body. I'm not the emotions and the sensations and the things that happen in my body. I'm something more than that. And the more that that becomes true for you in your life, the less power anxiety has to hold on to you, because it can't hold on to you. It has no chance. It loses its grip when you realize, when you understand what you are, that grip just like releases, because it's, yeah, you know, there's no anxiety in nothing.
Yeah, well stated. That was a beautiful answer. Thank you. So, you know, when you went into the project, went into the film project, did you have expectations? Did you know, or I'll just leave it at that. Did you have expectations of how this would work out? I mean, or I guess maybe a little bit also, tell us a little bit how the project came together. I know you talked to Gary Weber, but, and is it Mark?
Yeah, Mark Waters is the director of the film, one of my best friends. And how the project came about was, I was feeling these pains and all this kind of stuff. And I had, you know, Mark is a very close friend. He's an incredible filmmaker. I saw a lot of the work he's done in the past, and I was just like, wow, this guy's amazing. He's super cool. He's one of my best buds. I'm like, we need to make a film together. I just woke up one day and I had this overwhelming sensation in my body. Like, it's only happened, that was only the second time that I've ever felt something like that in my life. And it was so crystal clear that this is what I needed to do, that I didn't question it. Mine didn't come in. There were no doubts. There was nothing, like, do this. So I said, hey, Mark, we need to make a film together. And he's like, about what? I was like, I have no idea. About nothing. No, I'm just kidding. We didn't say that then. But just, we need to make a film. And okay. And he just agreed. Okay, I'll do it. I feel the same thing you feel, and I want to do this. So we thought, like, okay, maybe we make a film. We talk about fear and love, or we talk about this and that. And it was kind of like, you know, I don't know, what should we film? We were looking for somebody to film. We wanted to make a film to help other people. That was kind of the underlying premise. But then it was clear, like, how could we help other people if we're struggling with these things within our own selves? So we flipped it and we said, hey, let's just try to understand what's going on in our lives. Let me try to understand why I have anxiety, and let's just film it. And maybe that will be inspiring for other people, and maybe we'll find the answers. And I actually didn't expect for my anxiety to go away at all. We didn't have any plan. We thought, like, okay, everybody talks about yoga all the time. I've done some classes here and there, and we'll immerse ourselves and go do a yoga teacher training. And then we're there, and then someone tells us about how ayahuasca changed their life. So, okay, so let's try that. So then we Google ayahuasca, and we get someone to let us film there, and we go to this amazing place. And, oh, our friend's volunteering in Nepal. He's rebuilding schools, and he has amazing connections with some really beautiful monks and nuns in the mountains there. Let's go visit him and help rebuild these schools and talk to these monks and nuns and see what knowledge they can give us. So it was a really natural, organic process, which is why it took us so long. You know, it's not like most documentaries or films, you know, you're like, okay, you're filming for 20 days. It's not like we could say, okay, James, go heal your anxiety and change your life in 20 days. Here's the recipe. It wasn't like that. You know, it was like trial and error that's be guided on the path that we need to be guided on. And that's how it came to be. And, you know, Mark actually found out about Gary Weber, and Mark introduced me into the non-duality stuff because I was just like meditating. I was in my space and was kind of reading the Yoga Sutras at the time, and, you know, looking for wisdom from the East and these older traditions, which there's so much of. And then we came across Ramana Maharshi, and it was just like, whoa, like, this is interesting. And then Mark found Gary Weber, and he said to me, actually, you know, that conversation, I had no idea who he was or anything. They said, don't research this guy. Don't watch his TED Talks. Don't read his books. You're just going to go talk to this guy and share your story. Like, okay. So they arranged, Gary Weber came, and we sat across the table each other, and just 3-hour conversation about life and about all this stuff. And then he started slowly like telling me about this stuff. And it was just like, you know, and then that ended up becoming the answer to my anxiety, and becoming kind of the answer to the film. And so many people say these kind of things and throw it around, like, just be more present, or it's all about presence. And there's this big movement, this presence movement. But like, when we actually are present, when we actually realize that we can't be anything other than present, when we get to that point, it really changes the game. It really appears to change our life and how we view the world and how we view ourselves and how we view mental health and how we view all these things, because we're operating from a different place. And
that makes sense. People, you know, prior to, you think, I gotta be present. It's this place that you go to, and then you get to this point, you're like, I can't escape it. There is nothing other than that. And I think it's smart that you didn't do any research on him before, because the contrast in those scenes is pretty, it's heavy, you know, in some of those cases. Again, I don't want to
but what you just said about, you know, that idea of like, we have to be present. And it's like, there's no being present. There's no one who's being present. There's just presence. Right. You know, and the problem is just that thought of like, there's someone who has to be present. There's someone who has to overcome their anxiety. There's this false identity that we think we are, that if we stay connected to that identity of who we think we are, we're going to have an infinite amount of challenges forever. And and it's going to be, okay, now it's anxiety, and then it's this, and then it's that, and now it's my job, and now it's my relationship, and now it just never ends. So it's like a shortcut in a sense to just understand that we are presence, and it's not something that we have to be.
Great point. Yeah. In those regards, the pursuit of stuff is on the same side of the table as the pursuit of the ultimate goodie of enlightenment or being present or anything. It's all there. It's all someplace other than what we are, what is, all the time. So
exactly.
I will, there's a couple more questions. These are some of the great questions coming in, but I want to it's something I would do at the end anyway, but Carl is asking, besides the movie, do you have a channel or platform where you're teaching or sharing your story that anyone can connect to?
It is our movie website. I mean, I have my Instagram, which is james.sebastiano, where I share a lot of quotes and insights and stuff there. And then chasingthepresent.com is the website for our documentary film, which comes out on September 29th on iTunes and Vimeo and all these other places. Chasingthepresent.com. So those are the two places where you can do that. And yeah.
Okay, cool. I mean, we plugged right in the middle. Usually it's the end, but someone asks, so I figured I'd let you know. So amazing to hear from someone my age. I'm constantly questioning my me and investigating the ideas around I am. There are certain things I need to think about and desire. If I give up my desire for a good life and career and stop thinking, how can I live and function in the world? Maharaj said you should still live a full life of zest and continue your worldly life. I feel it is useful. I feel it's useful to long for a good life, which is foundation for the search. can I say I want to have a good career if I don't identify with the person?
I think it's possible to, for sure. I still live my life. I still go to meetings. Gary Weber doesn't anymore, but he was in that time. He was running a multi-million-dollar company when he was going through these things and all that kind of stuff. It's just how we relate to it. You know, it's not like we all have to give up our stuff and become sadhus and live on the street with a little coin jar and just, you know, it's like every single moment is presence. And I'll use words because I don't know, at the beginning of this conference, I was thinking like, what am I supposed to do? Just go sit there and like stare at you and that'll be my whole talk, you know? But I didn't want to be that guy. And I'm sure maybe somebody did that. I don't know. But it's, that's what it is. Right. But so if we're talking and we're trying to figure this stuff out in our minds, then it's important to share these things and there's steps. And I think they're important to take and to follow. But I think it's every opportunity through business, through meditation, through eating, through communicating with our friends, we have the opportunity to experience the presence that exists every moment because it is endless and it never stops and it's always there. So how do we take that and apply it to work? Well, we connect, it's hard to say it the right way because it's not the right way whenever I say it, but do we have the opportunity to be in that space that we're always in, but to realize that we're in that space at all the time, you know? And if something challenging comes up in the meeting and we go out and we're like, we're stressing for a moment, can we bring ourselves back? Can we realize again in that moment that, hey, this is presence? And I think it's much more challenging, but we get way more opportunities when we participate in the world and when we work and when we have families and then we have relationships than if we just went to the Himalayas and sat in the mountain alone and had food brought to us and money and we just meditated and just connected to presence all day. It's harder, it's more challenging, but those challenges are every time one of them comes up, it's a reminder of what we are. And it's a reminder of the fact that we need to realize that we are presence. So I think it's a game, you know, in the end, and it's just realizing that game and realizing it at work and trying to just be and exist and allow things to come. And when you get stressed because you're not reaching your numbers that you need to reach at work, allowing that stress to trigger the fact that you're present, as opposed to getting down that rabbit hole and letting it turn into depression and it's taking over you and it's destroying your life, which is another way that it can definitely go, but allowing it to be a teacher.
Yeah, they can all be reminders as they goes, as those events happen, those thoughts arise. There's been a pretty consistent theme today in something that you just said, a similarity in that I'll just call it a return. So a return back to and being able to actually enjoy the human experience with interest after this realization occurs. It's not it's like if we were all supposed to go live in caves, there'd probably be a lot more caves, you know, kind of thing, but actually living in this world with that understanding and being able to enjoy it for what it is. On that note,
and realizing that it's what we are, you know,
yeah.
And realizing that it's what we are. And I think that's the most beautiful, for me, it's the most beautiful part about non-duality. And I think it's the most important thing that as a society, we need to realize, because this illusion of separation, you know, this duality illusion, this illusion that there's a you and a me, and that there's a me and a tree, and that there's me and this, and that those people out there are creating all the problems, and just creating this separation, this illusion that we're separate from one another. If we could break that barrier, then the whole world would change, because it would just be this understanding that it just all is, it's all one, it's all this one thing. And yeah, when I trace back all the problems that I see happening in the world that appear to be, it's just this idea of separation, you know, all war is me versus you. And now we see it so much, this polarization in America with the racism stuff that's happening, and with the elections that are happening at the moment, this idea of we're separate. And that's a fundamental point, you know. And when we realize that we're one, we go into the world, as you were saying, and we see the trees and we see the mountains and we see the grass and we see each other as just like just this beautiful expressions of the same oneness.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And speaking of perspectives, how has being an entrepreneur changed in terms of your approach to business or your ambitions?
I'm taking on a lot less projects. Like when I was, when I first moved and I started, like literally I would get people every day wanting to collaborate with me on some different kind of a project. And I said yes to everything. I was just like, yes, I'll do it. Yes. Yeah. Do that times 5. I'm in. And I was just like, I'm like a very passionate, very fiery person. And I have a lot of energy, and it's easy for me to get carried away and that kind of thing. So I think it's just coming from a more grounded space of really, right now I'm not taking on any new projects. I'm working on film and sharing this message and promoting it, and potentially going to work on a book and these kind of things. But just not taking on as much, and only taking on things when I know with 100% certainty in myself that it's the right thing to do. And if I'm spending like 5 days, like, oh, should I do it? I don't know. And it's hurting in my stomach. And it's like, oh, I don't know. It's clear that I shouldn't do it, and just listening to that and having more clarity on what I should allow myself to participate in. I think that's the kind of the new way that I've been acting as an entrepreneur. That's great.
So you kind of gave the answer at the beginning, but I'm going to ask you this question, and you can't use the Gary Weber answer. But of all the folks that you spoke with in the film, what was your favorite pointer, or what, not even necessarily pointer, but favorite response that you got, and who was it from in the film? And was it not in the film? I mean, anything in terms of that journey that you took that sticks out for you?
I think, there's many. Everybody that we spoke to is really inspiring to me. But there was a quick piece that comes to my mind is towards the end of the film, I'm talking to Alex Gray, who's an amazing visionary artist. And I'm talking to him about my ayahuasca experience. And I had a death experience in my ayahuasca. And he said something to me that, even after I died in that experience, I was still there. And it's like that, right? Like when the mind stops, we're still there. And what is that thing that's still there that exists forever, into eternity and infinity and just it's always there, that nothingness, that everythingness, however we want to explain it. But what is that that's still there even after we die? And I don't tell people go do ayahuasca or something like that. It's just something I stumbled across, and it was a very, very, very challenging experience. But I do see it as a medicine. But that talk from him where he told me, like, even after I had that death, I was still there, was very powerful. And then one other good one was I don't want to give the whole film away, but Prem Baba was something that I realized, I was like, thinking about it and connecting the pieces and realizing my ego was suffering, and the ego was having anxiety. And then I was like, oh, suffering's an illusion. Suffering's not real, because the one who's suffering isn't who you really are. And that realization was really like, boom, it blew my mind. And then I was having a panic attack in the car like 2 weeks later, and I'm like, fuck, this doesn't feel like an illusion to me. I'm like freaking out. I can't drive. What kind of an illusion is this? You know what I mean? And it's like a dream. We have those experiences in our dreams, and we feel like we're suffering in a dream. Maybe it's a nightmare. You're running from something, or there's this crazy thing happening in your dream. Maybe you just dream rainbows and butterflies all the time. I don't know. But, for me, sometimes crazy dreams happen, but you wake up from that and you realize it wasn't real. And we have the opportunity in this life to wake up from that disidentification and realize that this stuff also isn't real in a sense. It's beautiful, and we participate in it, and we can experience presence, but the true nature of who we really are is not this. And those points kept coming across over and over again in the film, and yeah, they really changed my life.
Right on. I read something in the beginning, I think in your bio, now dedicating life to facilitating change. So I was going to ask you about, because you mentioned a little bit about you're not taking on any new projects, but you have a couple things that you're working on.
It is like, I'm not taking on your projects, but I'm working on a lot of new stuff.
It's an entrepreneur's curse.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but is there anything you can tell us about that are in that, you know, that are in that thematic element of helping to create change? I mean, I think that some of the things that you've said today are useful, and the film, I feel like, is not only interesting. I mean, it's a great story, and it's great. You couldn't write it better, really. You know, just trying to think it up. But what else? You know, in terms of the effect that this has had on you and how you see things moving forward, is there a project that comes to mind that you can tell us a little bit about?
Well, I'm actually, you know, and it's weird, like school, the idea of thinking of school and whatever, but it really inspired me to want to help people individually and in groups and stuff like that to go through this process. You know, the whole filmmaking thing, I've had so many people come up to me, and after I do a screening, you know, 20 people waiting in line to tell me how they're suffering from anxiety, to ask how to connect with themselves, to ask how to do self-inquiry and all this kind of stuff. So I'm working on a master's degree in therapy and counseling and psychology at the moment. Because I would really love to have that scientific side of an understanding, as well as my physical experience and what I experience in my daily life, to be able to really combine those things and speak from that place and share and help people and continue to grow and understand myself better. So I think the things I'm working on are just existing in presence all the time as much as I can be, and helping others who reach out to me who want to understand how or if it's possible to do the same thing.
Awesome. So I don't know if I wrote ask him who his favorite to talk to was, and I almost didn't ask you, but I figured I might as well. Who did you in the film? Who did you enjoy sitting with? I mean, this is being recorded, so I guess they're all your favorite, but I'm super curious because there's just a natural tendency to sit there and watch, and you keep going back to the different folks that you're speaking with. And so it's kind of like you have a natural, it'd be great if when that person comes up on the screen. Was there that for you in being in the presence of speaking with those folks live?
So you're asking me who my favorite kid is, basically.
Pretty much.
I don't have any kids, so that's, you know, I don't have to answer that. But in terms of the film, and yeah, they're all my favorites because they're the people that we chose to have in the film. But of course, it's awesome talking to Russell Brand. You know, Russell Brand, super deep guy, really funny, super conscious, really present, really in the moment, engaging. So it was awesome to speak to Russell Brand. It was incredible to speak to Gary Weber. He totally flipped my script. But I think from a heart place, from the feeling that I had being around the person and just like, wow, this like really interesting experience would be Prem Baba. We got to spend quite a lot of time with Prem Baba, and it was amazing. And Mooji was also incredible. Mooji's not in the film, but we actually did go, and I did a silent retreat with him, and I went to his ashram and stayed with him for a while and spent a couple of days together, and we filmed with him for a full day. But it just didn't fit into the film, so it didn't make it. But it was also really beautiful getting to spend that time with him. I actually wasn't able to be there for the Rupert Spira piece. Rupert Spira is also in the documentary, as you saw. It was just he and Mark in that scene because the time windows didn't work, and he was in England and Oxford or wherever, and it didn't work. But I would say Prem Baba, basically, in a nutshell, if I have to pick one.
All right. Well, if I don't have the same conundrum. I'm not in the same one, but he was my favorite as well. I love how he has that. There's that juxtaposition of, you know, he has the guru costume, so to speak, but then he's speaking in modern terms, you know, about things. I really liked him, but yeah, I agree that all of them had great things to say. So can you? We're on closing. If anyone has any more questions, go ahead and message them in. But James, once again, just give us a little bit of a plug about it. The date, I think, is probably most important to people. They can find the links on the website.
Yeah, the date is September 29th, or, you know, October 1st is easier for you to remember. And we're also planning a big event with Unify and another organization for a mental health day screening and event, which is on 10/10/2020. which I'm really excited about. And you can check me out on Instagram on the link, james.sebastiano, and yeah, chasingthepresent.com. And anyone, you know, who's watching, if you want to reach out to me privately on Instagram and send me a message, I answer all of my messages myself, and I really like the opportunity to interact and exchange. So please feel free to reach out. I'm here.